Hello and welcome to another Acts Church Subversive devotional thought. If you've been reading along with us, you'll have read from Acts 20, verses 13 through 22-21 over the weekend from Thursday's last devotional input. And there's a lot of ground covered here. Paul's on his return to Jerusalem. He's visiting various people along his way back, hearing witness that he will face persecution when he gets to Jerusalem, and we are reading right now that he is in the middle of a riot, a mob against him for being someone who reaches out to the Gentiles, and now he's in Roman custody. But I want to take us back to Paul's farewell conversation with the Ephesian church, where he asks or addresses an age-old question or concern. Am I my brother's keeper? That's right. He doesn't say that, but I think that's one of the things that it's addressing. So if you were to turn back to Acts 20, verse 25, and I want to read you just a couple of verses that strike me in that vein. Verse 25, and now I know that none of you among whom I have gone about proclaiming the kingdom will ever see my face again. Here Paul is wrapping up his thoughts. He's already given them a bit of a reminder of what he's done with them, and to the extent he's been there 2.5 years, or 2 years, 3 months at least, what we can figure out from Acts. And he has taught them. He's lived with them. He's suffered with them. He has suffered through the response to him and this way in Ephesians or Ephesus. And now he's saying that he's going to leave. He's not going to see them anymore. He's taught them about this inbreaking kingdom. And therefore I declare to you this day, verse 26, that I'm not responsible for the blood of any of you. For I did not shrink from declaring to you the whole purpose of God. Therefore keep watch over yourselves and over all the flock, of which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to shepherd the church of God, that he obtained with the blood of his own Son. For he knows that after this there's going to be savage wolves that come in. But I want to go back to that one line. Therefore I declare to you this day that I am not responsible for the blood of any of you. Isn't that the question that God asks in Cain and Abel's story? Where is your brother? What have you done with him? And Cain says, I'm not responsible for my brother. And God responds, his blood speaks out. And here Paul is saying, I'm not responsible for your blood anymore. I'm not responsible for that. And it sounds like he's passing the buck, that he is letting them take responsibility for whatever happens to them next. That's usually my first thought, in part maybe because from having kids at home and there's stuff laying around, and I ask, whose stuff on the floor is this? And it's impossible to figure out because everybody says, I didn't do it. I'm not responsible for that. It's somebody else. And on a more complicated level, if we were to ask, if you will, in church and say, are you responsible for the person's spiritual welfare that you're sitting next to in a church pew on a Sunday morning? Are you responsible for their prayer life and for their devotional life, for their journey in faith? And we might say, it's not my responsibility to meddle with them, to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to do. That's their responsibility. They're an adult. And here, maybe Paul is feeding into that, I'm not responsible for the blood of any of you. But in fact, it's not that. It's the opposite. It's that Paul's saying, up till now, I have not shrunk from declaring to you the whole purpose of God. I have done everything I can to take responsibility in sharing with you about this kingdom, this good news of the gospel. I have suffered with you. I have demonstrated with you how Jesus is and the way that you're supposed to follow him. I have done all I can. And now, as I leave and no longer see you, I am no longer responsible for your blood because I've done everything I possibly can. And now it's on your shoulders. You oversee, you watch. Which brings it back to this reality of responsibility. Am I my brother's keeper? And the answer actually is yes, we are. We are mutually responsible for each other's welfare and for grasping the kingdom and the whole purposes of God. Now, we don't have Paul's calling in the same way, but we are responsible because we've been brought into the family of God, which is a challenge because to say that all of a sudden potentially unleashes where we are all busybodies in each other's business, which is not what Paul is about. The rest of the New Testament reminds us that we ought to be careful about the gifts that we have and the way that we interact with each other according to that, but it doesn't take away our responsibility one to another, which is challenging, and I think that's also subversive. Because rather than reflect and deflect responsibility and say, it's not my problem, you're not my deal, it's saying we are each other's responsibility. So as you reflect on Acts and recognize how much they are for one another, this is an encouragement that we are to be a part of each other's lives and to trust each other to help us to see the kingdom and the whole purpose of God through and with each other. Let's take that to heart as we continue on being a community of hope dedicated to Christ-likeness so that we might be a benefit to the Blockhouse Bay and beyond. Peace.